Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. The last word from reigning IBF lightweight champion Beatriz Ferreira ahead of her title defense this weekend against Lucia Budersa. Beyond that, she says, unifications are the plan next year. That's what I've told my team, and I want them as quickly as possible.
Jesus Christ.
Coincidentally, matchroom impresario Eddie Hearn echoed that sentiment. He wants to get Beatriz a unification match. He has said he wants to make Beatriz Ferreira versus Terry Harper in-house lightweight unification fight next if Ferreira successfully defends the belt in Monaco this weekend. She will. Poor Terry is stuck between a rock and a hard place because there are no easy outs or unifications of opportunity. You're either fighting in a unification with Beatriz or fighting in a unification with Caroline Dubois, who was recently elevated to full WBC champion as a result of Katie Taylor vacating the title. The old saying goes that fair weather never made a good captain. Well, it's all rough seas from here. She's surrounded by amateur standouts, by Olympians who medaled in the Olympics. Terry Harper at lightweight is surrounded. And I don't know what she's going to do because seemingly there are no alternatives. Moving up in weight, trying to get a Katie Taylor fight, that's not an alternative. Katie may be fighting Amanda for a third time, and if she doesn't, she'll just end up fighting Chantel for a third time. Katie is not an alternative. Moving up to welterweight, it's not much of an alternative because she just came from welterweight. She just dropped down from welterweight to lightweight and became WBO champion. So what? She's gonna move back up to fight who? Natasha Jonas is spoken for. Lauren Price is spoken for. Michaela Mayer isn't. Maybe Michaela Mayer would service as an alternative to either a Caroline Dubois fight or a Beatriz Ferreira fight on the premise that, well, Michaela is a more established name. She's got a bigger name than they do, and she does have a belt for you to fight for, though seemingly a redundancy because, like I said, Terry Harper just moved down from welterweight after Sandy Ryan stopped her, after Sandy Ryan forced her to retire in her corner. She just came from there. Now she's going to go back up after having become a champion at 135. She's going to shoot back up to 147. Don't rule it out. Why not? Because a fight with Michaela Mayer at 147 is bigger than a fight with Beatriz Ferreira at 135, and bigger than a fight with Caroline Dubois at 135. Those would all be title fights and meaningful fights, significant fights, but those are also dangerous fights. And a Michaela Mayer fight isn't? No, it is. That's a dangerous fight too, but that's a dangerous fight with a profile, that's a dangerous fight with a backstory. Years ago, the biggest fight to make in the super featherweight division was a fight between Michaela Mayer and Terry Harper, as both were reigning champions parallel to each other. Then in comes Alicia Baumgartner, knocks out Terry Harper, and the rest, as they say, is history. Wasn't a conversation anymore. But it's a conversation Team Harper might try to reignite, because fighting Beatriz Ferreira, even if it is for Beatriz's IBF title, even if it is a unification match, compared to a Mayer fight, it's a high-risk, low-reward. The same applies to a Dubois fight, a Caroline Dubois fight. Same deal. It's a unification, it would be, but compared to a Mayer fight, it's a high-risk, low-reward. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear that in the coming year, Terry might return to welter. It's the only alternative. It's not that I don't think Terry's a good fighter. She's a very good fighter and accomplished. I've been a fan of her for many, many years, but I wouldn't be of much use to anybody if I edged fights based on what fighters I like. What fighters do I have a soft spot for? You can't forecast the outcome of a fight and hope to be accurate accurate when you're using your personal preferences as a compass. So as much as I like Terry, and as accomplished as he is, I think both Carolyn and Beatrice would knock her out.
Sorry to say.
This is where a Michaela Mayer fight comes in. You see, Michaela Mayer is not going to be able to get any unification matches at welterweight, at least not momentarily. Natasha Jonas is unifying titles with Ivana Habazin tomorrow.
WBA champion Lauren Price is on the undercard.
Ben Shalom's plan is to put the winner of Jonas versus Habazin in the ring with Lauren Price next year. So at least momentarily, Michaela doesn't have access to any of those champions, but she's got to keep busy, she's got to fight somebody. Enter Terry Harper.
Terry's gonna have to travel for that one, though. I think she'd have to come to America, fight Michaela Mayer here on a top-ranked show. That's what I think.
What may sound like certain defeat for Terry Harper, but that's what she'd be facing in a smaller fight with Caroline Dubois, and that's what she'd be facing in a smaller fight with Beatrice Ferreira. Suddenly fighting Michaela in America, it's not such a bad idea.
It's not so bad.
Just giving it to you straight!
Yeah!
Because it's the only way I know how to give it to you. If Terry actually does try to unify with Beatrice, she's gonna get knocked out.
Let's not be childish.
So, for running those risks with Beatrice, you might as well settle up with Michaela.
She might.
It will be up to Michaela Mayer and the people at Top Rank to make a play for that fight, though.
It's on them. They have to make it happen. And if they don't make a play for it, like I said, Terry is stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Men's Super Bantamweight news you might have heard already. Disaster. Sam Goodman has been cut over his eye in the final spar before the undisputed fight with Inoue set to go down later on this month. Goodman camp now pushing for a delay to scheduled Christmas Eve fight in Tokyo. Goodman was set to fly out tomorrow.
Oh,
How convenient.
you guys know what I think.
Veteran boxing scribe Dake Jonovan said he's told that a contingency plan is in place to preserve the date if it comes to that. With a leading replacement opponent already lined up, Inoue versus Goodman would just have to come after that, if so. Good of them to have a plan B, a contingency. Maybe they felt how I felt. Sam Goodman doesn't really want this fight. If something happens, we need to make sure we can save the date. And so they have.
Well, you see the picture. The guy's got a cut right above his eyelid. That's a bad place for a cut.
So I remember, immediately after Inoue's fight with Marlon Tapales, I think it was, Sam Goodman was ringside. And after the fight, he walks in a ring, he gives Inoue an ultimatum, as if he has to give Inoue an ultimatum. He tells him, you're either going to fight me or you're going to vacate the title. Just for that same Sam Goodman to schedule a fight with somebody else right after that.
You understand the sport of boxing. You understand that anything can happen. That even in a fight where you win, you could get lumped up, you could get tenderized. So if you're so focused, or you were so focused on fighting Inoue, why would you schedule a fight with somebody else?
So he schedules a fight with some Thai fighter, whose name I can't pronounce, and as a result of that, Inoue ends up keeping busy with TJ Doheny.
In case you forgot.
Sam fights this Thai fighter, and it turns out to be harder than expected. He was reported to have broken his hand in the fight. That's what the report said, but that's not what I believe.
I think it's bullshit.
So all of that comes and goes. Sam takes care of the Thai fighter. Inoue takes care of TJ Doheny. They reschedule the fight between them for December of this year. And once again, disaster strikes. Oh, now he's cut.
I don't think Sam wants this fight. What I think Sam wanted was for Inoue, having collected all the belts, to hurry up and move up to featherweight. I think he was banking on fighting for a vacant title, and when he sees that Inoue's not leaving,
Stuck between a rock and a hard place, a rock and a hard cock.
Jesus Christ.
I don't think he wants this thing. And this was a last-ditch effort, a last way out. That he would rather make safe money, domestic money, in Australia, while he's still unbeaten, biding his time and fighting guys he knows he can beat, than make a big payday with Inoue, because if you fight Inoue, he's gonna knock you out.
yeah, the assignment pays well, it pays great, but he's gonna knock you out.
This guy hits so hard, he'll change your life.
So what do you think, he cut his own eye?
And I wouldn't put it past him, because what's a little cut on the eyelid compared to Inoue brutalizing you round after round after round. Suddenly, a little cut on your eyelid doesn't seem so bad.
Wouldn't put it past him.
This pushes everything back for Naoya Inoue because Sam Goodman is his mandatory challenger by way of the WBO, and he's got another mandatory in the queue by way of the WBA, former champion MJ Akhmadaliev, who's fighting this weekend in Monaco. If he wins, he's also in line to fight Inoue.
I feel like Team Inoue have wasted enough time on a guy that doesn't really want to fight them in Sam Goodman, as opposed to a guy who does in MJ. That's the fight I really want to see.
Sam Goodman always seemed like cannon fodder to me anyway. I was confident. Inoue's gonna stop this guy. Inoue's gonna knock him out. That's what I think. The thing is, Sam is his mandatory challenger, so this whole thing requires reconciliation. Inoue can hardly be at fault for whatever Sam does or doesn't suffer in sparring.
As it pertains to the WBA.
And as it pertains to their mandatory challenger, MJ Akhmadaliev, I feel like temperance and patience would be warranted in this situation, that if there is a delay, it's not Inoue's fault, so he should hardly be penalized for it.
So they've got a plan B. He's gonna fight somebody else. They're gonna save the date.
It's not like Sam Goodman was all that pivotal towards selling an Inoue fight in Japan anyway.
No.
Inoue can fight a ham sandwich in Japan and sell out.
He'll be fine.
But I just had to put it out there. I just had to say it. I don't think Sam's injured. I think this is just the last-ditch effort to get out of this fight. I don't think he really wants to fight Inoue or fight for Undisputed, because he knows, like I know, like you know, what's gonna happen if he does. He's gonna get knocked out.
Can't be a coincidence. This guy keeps getting injured.
Oh, before he gets injured, you tell me, if your sole focus was fighting Inoue for Undisputed, why would you schedule a fight with somebody else after you called him out?
Like he needed you to call him out.
He was just hamming it up, trying to sell it, trying to make people believe that he really wanted that Inoue fight, knowing the whole time he's gonna target somebody else, some ham and egg guy in Australia.
He thought if he waits long enough, Inoue will leave. Inoue will move up because he's undisputed already. What's keeping him at 122?
He didn't figure he'd stick around this long, but he is. And finally, in men's super middleweight news, charting the ring return of Edgar Berlanga, who has landed his own March main event. Edgar Berlanga's surge of validation in going the distance with Canelo Alvarez has propelled him to his own main event in March. Two boxing officials familiar with the situation have told Boxing Scene. Brooklyn's Berlanga, 27, has not finalized his opponent, but one official said DAZN will stream the card that will occur in either New York or Puerto Rico, where Berlanga's family has its roots. Berlanga, 22-1 with 17 KOs, emerged earlier this year as the top-ranked contender to Alvarez, according to the WBA, and when the sport's most popular fighter from Mexico sought a younger contender to defend his 3 super middleweight titles against, he chose the charismatic New York power puncher.
That guy hasn't looked like a power puncher in a long time.
Alvarez knocked down Berlanga in the 3rd round, but the challenger stood his ground afterwards and has repeatedly expressed viewing the experience as a moral victory after the judges turned in lopsided scores favoring the 4-division champion Alvarez. Berlanga remains a top 5 super middleweight contender according to the WBC, WBO, and WBA, and he's spoken of seeking high-profile bouts with the likes of former super middleweight champion Caleb Plant, former middleweight champion Jermall Charlo, and others. The March date is expected to be about where Berlanga is a comfortable betting favorite, essentially a rebound fight, after bursting upon the scene with 16 consecutive first-round knockouts. Berlanga has the ability to become a promotional free agent following this fight under Eddie Hearns' Matchroom banner. He clearly gained a significant boost of name recognition by fighting Alvarez, and this coming card as a headliner will further the self-promotion cause.
So he could be entering free agency soon. And if he were to decide he doesn't want to stay at Matchroom anymore, where would he go? Because he migrated to Matchroom from Top Rank.
I don't think he wants to go back. What about the PBC? He is eyeing 2 PBC fighters. Caleb Plant, Jermall Charlo, that's what those guys are.
They're PBC fighters.
And Edgar Berlanga does have the sort of self-inflated sense of self that he's gonna think he's a box office guy moving forward. He is gonna think he's a pay-per-view fighter for having been on pay-per-view with Canelo.
Even though that has more to do with Canelo than it does to do with him, still.
He is eyeing PBC fighters, and most of what the PBC is doing these days our pay-per-views.
So you're saying you think he'll go to the PBC?
I'm saying I wouldn't rule it out. There is a caveat. The PBC aren't operating at anywhere near the capacity that they used to. They don't have anywhere near as much money, and they don't have anywhere near as many fight dates. That's a problem.
What about MVP?
I wouldn't rule out a move to Most Valuable Promotions. MVP, like Matchroom, has taken a liking to staging shows on the island of Puerto Rico and Puerto Rican fighters, Puerto Rican talent.
Edgar's Puerto Rican.
No shit, Sherlock Edgar's Puerto Rican. That's the point I'm making. For a Puerto Rican fighter like Edgar, who wants to get a lot of exposure and promote himself as best as he can, MVP might not be a bad fit. You see what Jake just did with Mike Tyson on Netflix?
I would not rule out a move to Jake Paul's Most Valuable Promotions if they will have him, if they will have Edgar.
If he by some chance decides that he's done all he can do at Matchroom.
Why would he, though?
Do you remember what the circumstances were when he left Top Rank? My understanding is they wanted to match him tougher. That is, for the kind of money that he wanted to make fight by fight, they wanted more ambitious opponents, more ambitious matchmaking. Edgar.
That must not have been what he wanted because he left. He ends up at Matchroom, and that bought him time. Enough time to stay unbeaten, make it to a Canelo Alvarez fight. But now that he's had that fight...
You've got a fighter over there in Diego Pacheco that I think is a better fighter by and large than Edgar Berlanga. I don't think Edgar wants that fight. He doesn't want that fight with that fighter.
So you think he's gonna haul tail?
I think he might. The guys he's looking at, Caleb Plant, Jermall Charlo, they're at the PBC. And I wouldn't rule out a move to Most Valuable Promotions either. Their ability to promote a fighter, especially a Puerto Rican one.
This might be Edgar's last fight at Matchroom.
It could. And it could end up in either the Hulu Theater in the tri-state area in New York City or on the island of Puerto Rico. But if you're Matchroom and you know, this guy might jump ship, this guy might leave after this, how much effort?
How much money are you going to spend on what could be his final fight under your promotional banner? It's a legitimate question.
And they've been good to Edgar Berlanga. They helped him make it to that Canelo Alvarez fight, but what you'll find is that the fighters and their teams are anything but loyal. No, they can be quite selfish.
They're gonna do what's right for them.
Like when an Anthony Yard all of a sudden decides to leave Queensberry Promotions after everything they did for him.
And Edgar Berlanga could decide to leave Matchroom after everything they did for him.
There isn't much to keep him there anyway, when you think about it. What's the biggest fight that Matchroom can make for him now? The Diego Pacheco fight? He don't win that fight, and even worse, I don't think he wants it anyway.
Nope.
If I'm this guy's manager, I'd tell him to go to Most Valuable Promotions, over to PBC. I would take him to MVP, because MVP's got something going on with Netflix. And Netflix...
If you want exposure, you'll get it on Netflix.
Going to Netflix won't bar you from landing a fight with either Caleb Plant or Jermall Charlo because they have the money to make it happen.
They had enough money to get Mario Barrios to go over there, and he's a PBC guy.
As a business decision, if Edgar were to leave Matchroom, I think the best place for him to go would be MVP, would be Most Valuable Promotions.
That might be a good fit for him.